My dear friends, let's take a deep breath together. Breathe in love and breathe out resistance. Now, I want you to know something powerful. Everything is falling into place because you are no longer holding it back. This is not coincidence. This is alignment. This is healing. This is growth. Let's begin with a concept that challenges many of us at the deepest level: letting go. This idea can seem counterintuitive, especially in a world that glorifies control, precision, and relentless effort. We're taught from a young age that success means grabbing hold, planning every step, forcing outcomes, and never relaxing our grip. But what if that very grip, tight with fear, with anxiety, with the need to predict, is the thing blocking our growth? What if the flow of life has always been trying to carry us forward, and we've simply been resisting it? Letting go isn't about apathy or carelessness. It's not giving up, and it's certainly not weakness. Rather, it's the conscious decision to stop resisting the natural order of life. It is the act of releasing our mental and emotional barriers, the fear of the unknown, the obsession with control, the subconscious belief that we are not safe unless we're struggling. From a psychological perspective, control is often a trauma response. When we've experienced chaos, abandonment, or unpredictability in life, we may attempt to manufacture safety by managing every variable around us. But the truth is, we can never control the outer world completely. The weather will change, people will change, circumstances will evolve, and in our effort to micromanage life, we end up creating internal chaos, stress, fatigue, disconnection, and sometimes even illness. Philosophically, control is a form of ego. The ego fears surrender because it equates surrender with loss. But the higher self knows better. It understands that to flow with life is to trust the intelligence that created the oceans, the galaxies, and the human heart. This isn't blind faith. It's a deeply intelligent trust, one rooted in experience, in observation, and in spiritual maturity. When you let go, you make space. Space for healing, for clarity, for unexpected blessings to arrive. You stop trying to force timing and instead allow things to unfold in their own rhythm. You become less interested in chasing outcomes and more present with the unfolding moment. And ironically, it is this very presence that draws the right people, the right opportunities, and the right solutions to you. In my own work, and in the thousands of people I've witnessed transform, this is the turning point, not the moment when they finally achieve the goal, but the moment when they stop pushing and start trusting, when they drop the struggle and choose peace. From that space, actions become intuitive rather than forced. Decisions become clear instead of rushed. Life becomes cooperative rather than combative. I often say, your life doesn't need fixing. It needs your permission to flow. The river doesn't strain to move forward. It moves because it surrenders to gravity. That same principle exists within us. The more we release our resistance, emotional, mental, even physical, the more we align with the natural momentum of life itself. So the question I invite you to sit with is this: what am I still trying to control that no longer serves me? It might be a relationship, it might be a timeline, it might be your own inner critic telling you you're not doing enough. Whatever it is, breathe into it now, offer it your compassion, and ask yourself, am I willing to let this go just for today? Letting go is not a single moment. It's a daily practice, a spiritual discipline. It's a choice to believe that you are supported, even when you cannot see the evidence. And it's the doorway through which everything you've been calling in can finally enter. When we stop holding everything so tightly, life finally has room to move. If we look closely at the barriers that hold us back, we often find they're not made of external limitations, but internal beliefs. These beliefs, many of which were formed before we had the ability to think critically or consciously, operate like invisible scripts that shape our entire reality. They influence what we think we deserve, what we pursue, and even how much joy we allow ourselves to feel. And yet, most of these beliefs were never really ours to begin with. Think about it. When you were a child, you absorbed messages about the world and your place in it long before you could evaluate their truth. You may have been told money doesn't grow on trees, or people like us don't get ahead, or don't get your hopes up. Over time, these messages settled into your subconscious, not because they were true, but because they were repeated. And repetition is how the subconscious mind learns. Psychologically, these limiting beliefs form what we call core schemas, a deep mental frameworks that act as filters for how we interpret experience. If you hold a belief like "I'm not worthy of love," you will unconsciously interpret neutral events as proof of that belief. Someone not texting back becomes rejection. A missed opportunity feels like confirmation. These beliefs don't just sit quietly in the background, they direct the movie of our lives. Philosophically, we could say these beliefs create a kind of prison of the mind, a self-imposed limitation that feels so familiar we don't even question it. It's like living in a house with low ceilings and forgetting that the sky exists. But what if I told you those ceilings were never real? That they were constructed out of the fears, projections, and insecurities of others, and that you have the power to tear them down. This is where awareness becomes revolutionary, because once you become aware of a belief, you are no longer its prisoner. You become its observer, and from that place, change becomes not only possible, it becomes inevitable. The process of releasing old beliefs doesn't happen overnight. It requires compassion, patience, and a deep commitment to truth. Often, the first step is simply asking yourself, "Who told me this, and why did I believe them?" You might find that the voices echoing in your mind aren't even yours. They may belong to a fearful parent, a wounded teacher, or a culture rooted in lack and shame. Once you recognize that, you reclaim your authority. That's why affirmations are so powerful. Not because they magically erase years of conditioning, but because they interrupt the old script. They insert a new voice, your own voice declaring what is true now. When you say, "I am worthy," you're not lying to yourself, you're reclaiming a truth that was buried. When you say, "I deserve joy," you are choosing to align with a deeper wisdom, one that transcends the limitations of your past. Remember, every belief you hold is a choice, whether conscious or unconscious, and choice is where your power lies. When you consciously choose to release a belief that no longer serves you, you are telling the universe, "I am ready for more. I am ready for something truer, something freer, something aligned with who I really am, not who I was conditioned to be." We do not outgrow old beliefs by accident. We outgrow them by truth, telling, by awareness, and by the willingness to stop carrying what was never ours to hold. That is not just healing, that is liberation. When we question the thoughts that once defined us, we reclaim the life that was always waiting for us. There's something subtle yet profoundly powerful about the words we speak to ourselves. Most of us think of language as simply a way to communicate with others. But in truth, the most impactful conversations we'll ever have are the ones happening silently within our own minds. And many of those conversations, those quiet, automatic thoughts, are shaping our reality without us even knowing it. You see, every thought is an affirmation. Whether it's positive or negative, whether we realize it or not, our inner dialogue is constantly affirming what we believe about ourselves and the world. When someone thinks I'm always behind, or I'll never catch a break, that's not just a passing observation. That's a subconscious directive. The mind, like a faithful servant, will look for evidence to support it. It will align perceptions, emotions, and even behaviors with that belief. That's how powerful our words are. Psychologically, this is connected to what's known as confirmation bias. We seek and interpret information in a way that confirms what we already believe to be true. So when we speak words of fear or lack, our minds go to work finding reasons to validate them. The same is true in reverse. When we start affirming new, empowering truths gently, consistently, we begin to rewire the neural pathways that shape our perception. We begin to affirm a different story. Now, many people struggle with affirmations at first. I hear this all the time, it feels fake, or I don't believe it yet. That's understandable. But here's the key. Affirmations are not about pretending. They're about choosing. We don't say, I am whole, because we always feel whole. We say it because we are choosing to align with the deeper truth of our being, even when the surface story hasn't caught up yet. Philosophically, this brings us to the idea of the creative mind. In metaphysical thought, something Louise Hay spoke about often, the mind is not just an observer of reality, but a participant in creating it. Thoughts repeated with emotion and intention shape the energetic structure of our lives. We are not victims of circumstance, we are co-creators. Not in a superficial, positive thinking way, but in a very real, very disciplined way that requires awareness and presence. That's why the practice of using affirmations must be approached with sincerity, not force. It's not about shouting declarations into the mirror and hoping something changes. It's about speaking to yourself the way you would speak to someone you deeply love, with gentleness, with patience, with the intention to support and uplift, not to fix or shame. And here's what begins to happen. Over time, your nervous system starts to relax. Your subconscious begins to soften its grip on old limiting narratives. You begin to act, speak, and respond from a different inner place, one that feels safer, more confident, more aligned with who you truly are. What you affirm today becomes your experience tomorrow. Every kind, powerful, loving word you speak to yourself is a seed. Some bloom quickly, some take time, but all of them matter. So the invitation is simple. Begin noticing the words you use. Catch yourself in the habitual self-criticism or fear and gently pivot. Replace I can't with I'm learning. Replace I'm stuck with I'm finding a new way. These small shifts are not small at all. They are the language of transformation. When you choose your words with intention, you choose your life with clarity. There's a truth so simple and so profound that many people overlook it. Nothing in your life can truly heal, transform, or align until you make peace with yourself. I'm not talking about surface level self-esteem or forcing yourself to feel confident. I'm speaking about deep, unconditional self. Love the kind that accepts you not just when you're thriving, but when you're in pieces. When you stop needing to be fixed in order to be worthy, this kind of love is not vanity, it's not ego. It's the foundation of all healing, all clarity, and all growth. Without it, we sabotage ourselves in subtle ways. We second guess our instincts. We stay in relationships or environments that drain us. We defer our dreams, waiting for a more perfect version of ourselves to finally deserve what we want. But you already deserve it. Psychologically, this lack of self-love often comes from early experiences where love was conditional. Maybe love was only given when we performed, achieved, behaved, or pleased others. So we internalize the message, I must earn love. I must be better to be enough. And that belief left unchallenged becomes the silent architect of our adult decisions. We push ourselves beyond our limits. We tolerate disrespect. We hide our true feelings just to be accepted. But the truth is, real growth only happens when we feel safe. And self-love is the ultimate safety when you become a place of refuge for yourself. Not judgment, not pressure, but compassion. You unlock the part of your mind that's capable of real change. Because your inner critic might push you, but only your inner nurturer can heal you. And here's something important. Self-love is not a feeling, it's a practice. Just like we brush our teeth or care for our homes, we have to care for the inner environment we live in every day. Our thoughts, our emotions, our inner dialogue. That means choosing thoughts that support us, not tear us down. It means giving ourselves permission to rest when we're tired, to speak up when something isn't right, and to forgive ourselves when we fall short. Philosophically, when we withhold love from ourselves, we break alignment with life itself, because life doesn't withhold its love. Nature doesn't ask the trees to be taller before it gives them sunlight. It simply nourishes them because they exist. And so must we learn to nourish ourselves not as a reward, but as a birthright. When we begin to love ourselves in this way, something shifts. We stop chasing things to feel worthy, and instead become open to receiving them because we know we're already enough. Opportunities find us. Relationships improve not because we demand more from others, but because we now expect more from within. We set boundaries not to shut people out, but to honor the peace we've built inside. And just like that, everything starts to fall into place. Not perfectly, not instantly, but meaningfully, because you are no longer holding yourself back with shame, fear, or judgment. You're walking alongside yourself rather than running away from your reflection. So if nothing else, let this land. You do not have to wait to love yourself. You do not have to earn your own acceptance. You are already enough, not in some abstract spiritual way, but in the here and now as you are. And from that place, anything becomes possible. When you finally love the person you see in the mirror, the world begins to reflect that love right back to you. One of the greatest shifts we can make in our inner world is moving from resistance to alignment. And this shift begins when we understand that life is not something we control. It's something we cooperate with. When we resist what is, we create tension. That tension shows up as anxiety, frustration, and inner conflict. But when we begin to align with life's natural rhythms, we begin to experience peace, synchronicity, and flow. Most people are unconsciously fighting life. They fight against their timing. They fight against their emotions. They fight against the pace at which things are unfolding. And often, they fight against their own intuition, believing they should be somewhere else, someone else, doing something else. This internal battle creates exhaustion because you are constantly in a tug-of war with reality. Psychologically, this resistance can stem from the fear that if we don't push, if we don't control, if we don't strategize every detail, nothing will work out. But the irony is, the more we force things, the more disconnected we become from the very intelligence that's designed to guide us. Your intuition, your sense of timing, your emotional compass. These aren't just spiritual concepts. They are grounded faculties within you, meant to direct you toward alignment. Alignment, by contrast, is a state of inner agreement. It's when your thoughts, feelings, and actions are no longer at odds with each other. It's when your outer life reflects your inner truth, and it's when you begin to say yes to life, not just when things are easy, but even when things are uncertain. That doesn't mean passive acceptance. It means engaged presence. It means you stop resisting what is long enough to hear what it's trying to teach you. Philosophically, this brings us to a deeper understanding. Life has a wisdom of its own. It's always moving, evolving, and expanding toward greater balance and healing. When we work with it rather than against it, we begin to see that delays are not denials, that closed doors are redirections, and that setbacks often carry the very insight we needed to grow. Now, this doesn't mean we abandon ambition or stop making plans. It simply means we become more flexible, more attuned, and more open. We make plans, but we don't cling to them. We take action, but we release the outcome. We trust that if something doesn't happen the way we imagined, it may be happening in a way that's far better than what we could have designed on our own. It's about learning to listen to your body, to your energy, to that quiet inner voice that often speaks in whispers, not shouts. And it's about respecting the seasons of your life. There is a time for effort and a time for rest. A time for seeking and a time for receiving. A time to build and a time to be still. When we ignore these seasons, we create imbalance. When we honor them, we create harmony. So ask yourself, where in my life am I forcing what wants to flow? Where am I pushing when I'm meant to pause? Where am I doubting when I could be trusting? These questions are not meant to shame you. They are meant to invite you back into partnership with life. Because the truth is, life wants to support you. But it can only do so when you stop wrestling with it long enough to feel where it's trying to lead you. When we stop forcing and start flowing, we don't lose control. We gain alignment. There comes a moment on the path of transformation when we realize something very important. Change isn't just about doing, it's about becoming. And becoming begins with identity. Not the identity given to us by family, society, or the past, but the one we choose consciously and deliberately, based on who we truly are and who we are ready to become. We live in a world that teaches behavior modification, change your habits, change your life, and that's partially true. But real, lasting change doesn't begin at the level of behavior. It begins at the level of identity. Because we always act in alignment with who we believe we are. If you believe you are disorganized, you will unconsciously create chaos. If you believe you are undeserving, you will unconsciously reject opportunities. The identity we hold becomes the blueprint that shapes our reality. Psychologically, identity is formed through repetition and emotional experience. If you were told growing up that you were lazy or not enough or too sensitive, those ideas may have crystallized into a self-image. And that self-image then becomes the lens through which you interpret your choices, your relationships, even your future. It's not that change is impossible, It's that change feels disloyal to who we think we are. But here's where the shift happens. Identity is not fixed. It is fluid. It can be reshaped, rewritten, redefined by you. And the moment you stop holding onto outdated versions of yourself, the moment you stop arguing for your limitations, you open the door for a new self to emerge. Not a fake version, not a mask, but a deeper, truer expression of who you've always been beneath the fear, beneath the programming. Philosophically, we might say that identity is the bridge between the human self and the divine self. It is the container through which our potential becomes expression. When we align our identity with love, with truth, with vision, not fear, not lack, we begin to live from our higher self. That's when our actions become natural, not forced. That's when the right decisions begin to feel obvious, because they're no longer filtered through the question, what would the old me do? To embody a new identity, we have to practice being that person today, even in small, quiet ways. You don't have to wait for evidence, you become the evidence. You don't need a perfect track record. You need willingness. Start saying, I am someone who speaks my truth, even if your voice trembles. Start saying, I am someone who honors my worth, even if you're still learning how. These statements are not about ego, they are invitations. Invitations to your nervous system, your subconscious mind, and your entire energetic field to come into alignment with your truth. And here's what's beautiful. When you shift your identity, you don't have to fight for change anymore. You become the change, the habits follow, the opportunities follow, the people who reflect your new vibration appear. Not because you chase them, but because you match them. And that is the most powerful transformation. There is not changing the world to fit your old identity, but changing your identity to match the world you are ready to receive. So ask yourself, what kind of person am I willing to become? What version of myself am I ready to release? And what version am I ready to welcome? You don't need permission, you don't need proof, you just need presence and a willingness to walk as the person you already are beneath the noise. The moment you embody who you truly are, life rises to meet you there.